Okay, good morning and welcome to Rise Up 2024. What's your story? Who is excited to be here today? Woo-hoo! It's going to be a great day of storytelling, community networking, and we're just so excited to have everybody with us. For the last couple of years, I kept myself behind this podium, but that's not really my style. I prefer to be out and among the people, so I'm going to just kind of do my thing this year and try to kind of go off the cuff. So as we talk about storytelling, I want to bring your attention to this little girl. Everybody know her? Ruby Bridges. Ruby had a story to tell, and I'm going to share a few excerpts from her story with you this morning. Our Ruby taught us a lot. She became someone who helped change our country. She was a part of history. Just like generals and presidents are part of history, they're leaders, and so was Ruby. Notice that there is no history without a story, so the story always comes first. In 1960, a judge ordered four black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. Ruby, at the age of 6 years old, was sent to first grade in the William Franz Elementary School. On Ruby's first day, the people carried signs. They said they didn't want black children in a white school. People called Ruby names and wanted to hurt her. Remember, she was 6. Federal marshals had to walk Ruby into the school building. The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school to sit with Ruby, so when Ruby got inside, she sat by herself with her teacher, Mrs. Henry. But every day, Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. This is Ruby's story. Sometimes, this is her teacher, Mrs. Henry, saying, sometimes I would look at her and wonder how she did it, how she went by those mobs and sat all by herself all day. One day, Mrs. Henry noticed that Ruby stopped in front of the mob and appeared to be speaking to them, and Mrs. Henry was wondering, what was going on? What was Ruby saying to them? When Ruby came into the room, Mrs. Henry asked Ruby what she had said. Ruby shared that she prayed for them. She's 6. This is Ruby's prayer. Please, God, try to forgive those people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So you could forgive them, just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you. Without Ruby's story, where would we be today? A story like Ruby's inspires us, educates us, helps us to understand the journey of another person, and creates history. We all have stories. I'm super excited to say that we are sold out today. 250 of you showed up to share in this moment, to talk about stories, to talk about the impact that stories have on our lives. So we all have them. So I'm going to ask right now, who here has a story?
Judy, I have a story.
Nydia, you have a story?
I do.
Come on up. Who else here has a story? Reuben? Awesome. Do we have another storyteller today? Rosie has a story. And what about any other stories in this room?
Hey, Judy, I have a story.
Tanya has a story to share as well. And do we have another story here this morning?
Gee, I have a story.
Cameron, you have one too? So you see, everybody has a story, and they're all different. Just like the petals on these flowers, each one is unique. But brought together, they create this beautiful bouquet. I can't exist in my story without all of you. You can't exist without me, just like these beautiful flowers that we've brought here today. So I want you to remember as you look at the flowers about the beauty of community and the power of storytelling and how we can all come together and share a common vase and share a singular goal. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a story that I have. This was about 4 years ago, and my husband and I were out on a Sunday afternoon at one of our favorite brunch spots in Studio City. Many of you have heard this story before. And we were sitting kind of on the sidewalk, and a white gentleman walked by, and he looked at me, and he yelled the N-word twice. And I cried. And I said to my husband, why can't people just know me for me? My husband got angry, he was ready to fight. But there was sadness and anger and frustration as a result of that. But again, we all have these moments. And when we're able to share our stories, we derive power from that. So that was the first part of my story. The second part of my story was the very next morning, Monday morning, we had a Racial Justice Committee meeting. Wendy, I don't know if you remember this. And Wendy always did a check-in with us, like, hey, how's it going? What are you up to? So on and so forth. And I shared my story of the previous day, less than 24 hours prior. And as I shared on a Zoom during COVID with 30, 40 other people, they began to hear my story. They began to understand a little bit about my journey and what that is like each and every day for me. There were, well, of course I was crying, but there were tears, there were phone calls, there were text messages, there were emails checking on me. It was one of the most beautiful moments that I've experienced. And the reason why is that there was such compassion and such understanding and such empathy demonstrated in that moment that I was overcome by the support that I get from my family at Penny Lane. And a number of you were on that call that morning. And I don't know if you know how much that has stuck with me and has impacted me, but knowing that I have people out there that will listen to my story and that really care, it's incredibly powerful. So here I took this story that was filled with hate and turned it into something beautiful. We can all turn our stories into something beautiful. And later, Janet is going to talk a little bit more about that. So we also recognize that stories are often told in families over and over and over, in communities over and over, passed down through generations. There is a reason for that.
Okay. So that way I can check and see for an empty...
What do I hear? So there's a reason why stories are passed down and passed on, because there is meaning, there is a lesson to be learned, there are morals to be taught and to be heard. and honoring those stories. If you sit with a grandparent, I think of all the stories that our mother tell our children. If you sit with a colleague, if you start sharing your story, you're going to find understanding and connection, truly. So stories help us to strive to be better through the lessons that we learn. And it is my hope for you today that you will take a moment to share your story with a neighbor, with a colleague, with someone in a workshop room. Because the more we connect with one another, the more our empathy builds. And the more all of those boundaries, those barriers that makes me separate from you, those go away. Because now we're just people. And it doesn't matter where you're from or what your upbringing was or what you look like or who you love. Now we're just people, and we're connecting with one another in a very real and powerful way. So I want to thank you again for being here this morning. It is a great honor to have each and every one of you participate in Rise Up. And with that, I'm going to introduce our CEO, Wendy Carpenter, who, I say it, she's my biggest champion. And yesterday was Boss's Day. Well, because I was going to shout you out today. And to the idea that I report to the CEO of a company, an agency, and this person is so incredibly giving and loving and caring and warm and just trusts me implicitly, I tell you, there's nothing like it. I wish you could all find that. So, with that, Wendy Carpenter.
Good morning. I just told Judy that was the best Boss's Day gift I could have gotten, so thank you so much for that. And thank you all. Boy, I like being behind the podium. That gives you a lot of cover, but I'm gonna take Judy Grant's confidence and channel it. But thank you so much for being here today for our Rise Up conference. And you know, look, I know there's so much going on in the world, so much going on in your lives, personal, professional, that you would make the time to be here means the world to us and means the world to our movement of social and racial justice. I also want to thank all the volunteers. These things don't happen in bubbles. It takes a lot of work to make things happen, and I really appreciate all of you. And also the Endowment Center. I don't know about you guys, but they've got the best vibe. Even the guy, as I'm driving in, he's wishing me a good morning. It's easy parking. There's not, I mean, thank goodness for the Endowment Center. I think we'll be booking this for, yes. So thank the staff that are here. They've been absolutely wonderful to us. And, you know, and of course, the lovely Judy Grant. You know, yes, I know. She walks the walk and talks the talk, and we are so grateful at Penny Lane to have her. I'm grateful to have you in my life, Judy Grant. I've learned a lot from you and whatnot. So today, our theme, as Judy so beautifully articulated, is about what is your story. And I want to take just a few minutes to be a little vulnerable, if I may, about the ugly side of stories. I recently just got back from a pilgrimage, and I try to do these every year. This was my fourth one. We went to Brittany, France. And I always know a few things about these pilgrimages, and I know that I have to go in and be my authentic self and be real, but I also know I'm going to be with 8 strangers that I don't know. And I like to go in blind, because that way I don't get my anxiety up. But not this time. This time, our guide, who is a dear friend, Bruce Anderson, who many of you may know, been involved with social and racial justice since the 70s, has been a real friend of mine and a friend of Penny Lane. He hosts these. And he's so excited, calls me. Can't wait for you to hear who's coming. And I'm like, Bruce, who's coming? He says the first name. And I'm like, oh, shit, I know that name. And it's a psychiatrist, very well-known psychiatrist, and working since like the 70s, a real trailblazer when it came to social and racial justice. And his belief is if you took people that were unhoused, particularly those who were using substances or people of color, and just created a village, created a community for them. All the medication, diagnosis, this medical model didn't mean. Published guy. So I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, well, he's going to be smart, but psychiatrists, they're not very social. I may have a leg up here with this guy. Second one he mentions, I know her name too. This is another published author. She, 70s, has created what she calls the Pie Cottage. And in this cottage, she invites people from all over the world and people of color, particularly women, to come and cook and share their recipes. Because as we know, a lot of people of color don't share their recipes. You ain't getting that recipe, ain't nobody writing that down. But they will come and share the stories. And then at the end, she's a white woman, she will share her history of pie. Because her great-grandmother, her great-great-grandmother, everybody handed down the ritual of making pie and what that meant for a sisterhood of women. And then at the end, they all have a slice of pie. So I'm thinking to myself, you know, I can't cook, I can't bake, but I can eat. So perhaps I will have something to talk to this woman with. And then the kicker, and this is when I asked him, Bruce, don't tell me any more people, and I did not recognize their names, is a husband and wife. And right there, I'm like, okay, I'm out. If you can work with your partner and live with them, I'm already impressed. But this is a couple, interesting, who are in Canada, and their work has been in the world of disabilities, particularly people of color. And they will create this community where, you know, about 30 people of color with disabilities will come together and they will choose some kind of activity they want to go on. Now, I'm not talking about the zoo. I'm not talking about going on a hike. I'm talking about going to Club Med. I'm talking about going on cruises, Dodger game, Laker games, and they will travel. And I'm thinking, wow, what a great thing to do for people that are disabled. It's not about them. It's about the community. And as people show themselves, are comfortable with who they are, and may screen out obscenities or may not be able to control themselves, this is when we teach the community. This is what this couple does. And I'm like, okay, don't tell me any more people. Because all of a sudden now, I can feel those old stories bubbling up in me. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart. These are social and racial justice giants. I'm looking for the pilgrimage for the slackers. This is not my pilgrimage. So I immediately go to what I know, right? And we all have these defense mechanisms when we're feeling unlovable, unworthy, not smart enough, not like you belong in the room. And I remember the stories of being little. And I was told, if you look a certain way, if you dress a certain way, if you act a certain way, nobody's going to ask what's going on at home, right? So I start planning my wardrobe, okay? I'm going to be the best dressed. So I get my palette together. I've got the blue, I've got the pink, I've got the Dodger hat with the blue and the pink. I'm going to roll in, and I'm going to look so good that no one is going to know what's going on inside of me or what's going on at home. My tactics worked. I roll in, I am dressed to the nines. No one can talk about anything else other than the way I look. And I was smart. At the last minute, I found on Amazon these adorable pink, Barbie pink tennis shoes. And so Bruce, the facilitator, says the first day, have you worn those before? Because we're walking 13 miles a day. He's like, have you worn those before? Have you broken them in? I'm like, Bruce, look at these shoes. You know, they pull the outfit together. So, you know, we're walking, I'm looking cute, and everybody is as smart as I thought they would be. And, you know, you're walking along these paths, and if I could describe it, these are paths that are, you're almost walking in a trough. Like the sides are coming up to your ankles, because so many people have walked on these paths, and we're in Brittany, France. So this has been 8th, 9th, 10th century, and you can't help but think about the people that walked before you. You know, I'm walking for self-reflection. I'm walking to have a deeper sense of myself. These people walked this path to escape whatever persecution. They walked to survive. And here I am with the luxury, the privilege to be able to walk that. And you can't help but not feel that heaviness. On the third or fourth day, we came across this really interesting monument, is the best way I can describe it. And there were, I want to say, like 15 huge anchors. And you know, we're in the area where the Nazis came and occupied France, right? And so each one of these anchors are actually from ships that went down trying to protect this area. And I am so moved by just how gargantuan this is, how overwhelming this is. And I can't help but not think what these people gave to hatred, to fight that, for freedom, for something better. And I go up to because I'm saying a prayer to myself, and I go up to look at the names and, you know, because I want to put names to the people that sacrificed. And there are no names. All there are the locations of where all these people came from, all over the world. And I see right in front of me Tucson, Arizona, and that's my hometown. And I'm thinking, my God, somebody in 1945 from Tucson, Arizona, came over here and fought to sacrifice for what really matters. The third thing I see, and then I'll wrap up, because I could go on. I walk into this is towards the last day. And I walk into this church that was built in the 12th century. And as you can imagine, gorgeous. And all around it are the different saints that protect the Brittany area. And I'm the only one in there. The rest of the people were off, I don't know. I'm already dressed, of course. They're off doing something. And the organist was there practicing. And I sat there and I could not help but think the different people that had come through here. All of their trials, all of their fights. I thought about the women with no rights and what they must have suffered. And that night when I came home, and we always circle up after our walk, and I don't know if it was the anchors or the church or just now that my pink shoes are filthy because we had a lot of rain, they're crusted in mud, I just gave up. And I sat there with my team, who I was still very intimidated by, and I sobbed. And I said, I don't feel worthy for this fight. I don't feel worthy to fight the social and racial justice. I just can't do it anymore. And I cried. And I shared my story. And it was amazing how the shift happened. All these intellectuals all of a sudden too said, I don't know that I've done enough. And in that moment, it was, I got to give up these stories, because we all tell each other these stories. So as I'm packing to go home, and I'm thinking to myself, this was the best pilgrimage ever. I don't know if I can do it again. I look at my pink shoes that are filthy, and I'm like, yeah, I could take these home and put them through the washer. They would be nice and spick and span again. I could wear them to the workplace. And then I think to myself, you know what? These are staying. These don't serve me anymore. The armor, the outfits, don't serve me. This is what serves me. So as we go through our conference today and we're sharing stories, let go of those stories that don't uplift you. Let go of those stories that don't empower you. Remember who you are in here. This is what matters. Thank you all.